The morning I turned 68 years old, I woke up and couldn't remember the last time I'd made a decision just for myself. Not for my husband, not for my children, not for the grandchildren or the church or the neighbors who always seemed to need something. Just for me. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling fan going round and round, listening to Vernon snoring beside me, and I tried to think, when was the last time I did something because I wanted to do it? When was the last time someone asked me what I wanted and I actually told them the truth? I couldn't remember, and that scared me more than anything had scared me in years. 68 years old. I'd lived on this earth for 68 years, and I didn't know what made me happy anymore. I didn't know what I liked or what I wanted or who I even was underneath all the roles I'd been playing for so long. Wife, mother, grandmother, church volunteer, good neighbor, dutiful daughter until my parents passed. I was all of those things. I'd been all of those things for decades. But who was I when no one needed anything from me? I didn't have an answer. The birthday cards started arriving that afternoon. Sweet cards with flowers and butterflies and words like, "To a wonderful wife," and "To the best mom ever," and "World's greatest grandma." I read each one and smiled and said thank you, and all the while I felt like I was watching myself from somewhere far away, like I was a ghost in my own life. That night, after the cake and the candles and the singing, after Vernon fell asleep in front of the television and the house went quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table and made a decision. Something had to change. I didn't know what yet. I didn't know how. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I couldn't spend whatever years I had left feeling like a stranger in my own skin. At 68 years old, I was finally ready to choose myself. I just had no idea how hard that choice would be. Let me tell you who I was before I became everyone else's everything. My name is Pearl Annette Dawson, though I've been Pearl Annette Crawford for 46 years now. I was born in 1955 in a tiny town in Alabama, the kind of place where church bells rang every Sunday morning and everybody waved at everybody else, whether they liked them or not. My mama was a homemaker, like all the women in our town. My daddy worked at the paper mill, came home smelling like wood pulp and sweat, and expected dinner on the table at 6 o'clock sharp. That was just how things were. Men worked, women kept house. Nobody questioned it. I was the middle child of 5, 2 older brothers, then me, then my younger sister Opal, then baby brother James, who came along as a surprise when Mama was 42. Being the middle child meant being invisible in a different way than I'd become invisible later. It meant learning to take care of yourself because nobody else had time to notice you. My older brothers were busy being boys, playing sports, getting into trouble, being groomed to take over the world the way boys were back then. Opal was the pretty one, the delicate one, the one Mama fussed over and dressed up like a little doll. James was the baby, the miracle, the child everyone doted on because he wasn't supposed to exist. And me? I was just Pearl. Quiet Pearl. Helpful Pearl. The one who did her chores without being asked and never made waves and always said yes when someone needed something. I learned early that being needed was the closest thing to being loved. If I helped Mama with the laundry, she'd pat my cheek and say, "What would I do without you, Pearl?" If I brought Daddy his slippers after work, he'd smile at me and say, "That's my good girl." If I let Opal borrow my things or gave James my dessert, I was praised for being generous, for being kind, for being selfless. So I kept being those things. I kept giving and helping and saying yes. I kept making myself useful because useful meant valued, and valued meant loved. At least that's what I believed. I met Vernon Crawford at a church picnic the summer I turned 22. He was 25, tall and handsome, with a square jaw and hands that looked like they knew how to work. He'd just gotten a job at the electric company, a good steady job with benefits and a future. All the young women at that picnic had their eyes on him, but he only had eyes for me. I still don't know why. I wasn't the prettiest girl there. That was Opal, who had come along and was getting plenty of attention herself. I wasn't the most outgoing or the most charming. I was just Pearl, standing by the lemonade table, trying not to spill anything on my yellow sundress. Vernon walked right up to me, bold as brass, and said, "I don't think we've met. I'm Vernon Crawford, and you're the most interesting looking woman here." Interesting looking. Not beautiful, not pretty, interesting looking. I should have known right then what kind of compliments I'd be getting for the rest of my life. But I was 22 and nobody had ever singled me out before, and my heart was beating so fast I could barely think straight. So I smiled and told him my name and spent the rest of the afternoon talking to him about everything and nothing. He was charming in his way, not romantic exactly. Vernon wasn't the type to bring flowers or write poetry, but attentive. He listened when I talked. He asked questions about my life, my family, my dreams. He made me feel like I mattered. That was enough for me. That was more than enough. We courted for 8 months before he proposed. He did it on Christmas Eve in my parents' living room in front of both our families. He got down on his knee and pulled out a ring, a tiny diamond that must have cost him a month's wages, and asked me to be his wife. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What else was I going to say with everyone watching, everyone expecting, everyone already planning the wedding in their heads? We got married in June of 1978 in the same church where we'd met. I wore my mama's wedding dress, taken in at the waist because I was smaller than she had been. Vernon wore a new suit he'd bought just for the occasion. The reception was in the church fellowship hall with punch and cake and my aunt's best casseroles. It was a good wedding. A proper wedding, the kind of wedding a girl from our town was supposed to have. I told myself I was happy. I told myself this was everything I'd ever wanted. And maybe it was. Maybe I just didn't know yet how much more there could be. The morning I turned 68 years old, I woke up and couldn't remember the last time I'd made a decision just for myself. Not for my husband, not for my children, not for the grandchildren or the church or the neighbors who always seemed to need something. Just for me. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling fan going round and round, listening to Vernon snoring beside me, and I tried to think. When was the last time I did something because I wanted to do it? When was the last time someone asked me what I wanted and I actually told them the truth? I couldn't remember. And that scared me more than anything had scared me in years. 68 years old. I had lived on this earth for 68 years, and I didn't know what made me happy anymore. I didn't know what I liked or what I wanted or who I even was underneath all the roles I'd been playing for so long. Wife, mother, grandmother, church volunteer, good neighbor, dutiful daughter until my parents passed. I was all of those things. I'd been all of those things for decades. But who was I when no one needed anything from me? I didn't have an answer. The birthday cards started arriving that afternoon. Sweet cards with flowers and butterflies and words like, "To a wonderful wife," and "To the best mom ever," and "World's greatest grandma." I read each one and smiled and said thank you, and all the while I felt like I was watching myself from somewhere far away, like I was a ghost in my own life. That night, after the cake and the candles and the singing, after Vernon fell asleep in front of the television and the house went quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table and made a decision. Something had to change. I didn't know what yet. I didn't know how, but I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that I couldn't spend whatever years I had left feeling like a stranger in my own skin. At 68 years old, I was finally ready to choose myself. I just had no idea how hard that choice would be. Let me tell you who I was before I became everyone else's everything. My name is Pearl. Pearl Annette Dawson, though I've been Pearl Annette Crawford for 46 years now. I was born in 1955 in a tiny town in Alabama, the kind of place where church bells rang every Sunday morning and everybody waved at everybody else, whether they liked them or not. My mama was a homemaker, like all the women in our town. My daddy worked at the paper mill, came home smelling like wood pulp and sweat, and expected dinner on the table at 6 o'clock sharp. That was just how things were. Men worked, women kept house. Nobody questioned it. I was the middle child of 5, 2 older brothers, then me, then my younger sister Opal, then baby brother James, who came along as a surprise when Mama was 42. Being the middle child meant being invisible in a different way than I'd become invisible later. It meant learning to take care of yourself because nobody else had time to notice you. My older brothers were busy being boys, playing sports, getting into trouble, being groomed to take over the world the way boys were back then. Opal was the pretty one, the delicate one, the one Mama fussed over and dressed up like a little doll. James was the baby, the miracle, the child everyone doted on because he wasn't supposed to exist. And me? I was just Pearl. Quiet Pearl. Helpful Pearl. The one who did her chores without being asked and never made waves and always said yes when someone needed something. I learned early that being needed was the closest thing to being loved. If I helped Mama with the laundry, she'd pat my cheek and say, "What would I do without you, Pearl?" If I brought Daddy his slippers after work, he'd smile at me and say, "That's my good girl." If I let Opal borrow my things or gave James my dessert, I was praised for being generous, for being kind, for being selfless. So I kept being those things. I kept giving and helping and saying yes. I kept making myself useful because useful meant valued and valued meant loved. At least that's what I believed. I met Vernon Crawford at a church picnic the summer I turned 22. He was 25, tall and handsome with a square jaw and hands that looked like they knew how to work. He'd just gotten a job at the electric company, a good, steady job with benefits and a future. All the young women at that picnic had their eyes on him, but he only had eyes on me. I still don't know why. I wasn't the prettiest girl there. That was Opal, who had come along and was getting plenty of attention herself. I wasn't the most outgoing or the most charming. I was just Pearl, standing by the lemonade table, trying not to spill anything on my yellow sundress. Vernon walked right up to me, bold as brass, and said, "I don't think we've met. I'm Vernon Crawford, and you're the most interesting looking woman here." Interesting looking. Not beautiful, not pretty, interesting looking. I should have known right then what kind of compliments I'd be getting for the rest of my life. But I was 22. And nobody had ever singled me out before, and my heart was beating so fast I could barely think straight. So I smiled and told him my name and spent the rest of the afternoon talking to him about everything and nothing. He was charming in his way, not romantic exactly. Vernon wasn't the type to bring flowers or write poetry, but attentive. He listened when I talked. He asked questions about my life, my family, my dreams. He made me feel like I mattered. That was enough. That was more than enough. We courted for 8 months before he proposed. He did it on Christmas Eve, in my parents' living room, in front of both our families. He got down on one knee and pulled out a ring, a tiny diamond that must have cost him a month's wages, and asked me to be his wife. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What else was I gonna say with everyone watching, everyone expecting, everyone already planning the wedding in their heads? We got married in June of 1978 in the same church where we'd met. I wore my mama's wedding dress, taken in at the waist because I was smaller than she had been. Vernon wore a new suit he'd bought just for the occasion. The reception was in the church fellowship hall with punch and cake and my aunt's best casseroles. It was a good wedding, a proper wedding, the kind of wedding a girl from our town was supposed to have. I told myself I was happy. I told myself this was everything I'd ever wanted. And maybe it was. Maybe I just didn't know yet how much more there could be. Vernon didn't like the beach. He said sand got everywhere and salt water was bad for the skin. He said if I wanted to see water, we had a perfectly good lake 20 miles away, and that should be enough for anyone. So I never went to the ocean. 50 years I've been alive, and I've never stood on a beach, never felt the waves, never tasted salt air on my lips. 50 years of wanting something and never letting myself have it. That's what I mean when I say I gave up. I gave up the reading and the singing and the ocean. I gave up my opinions and my preferences and my voice. I gave up the parts of myself that didn't fit into the life I was living until there was nothing left but the roles I played. Wife, mother, grandmother, good Christian woman, useful, needed, empty. By the time I turned 68, I'd been living this way for so long, I'd forgotten there was any other way to live. And then came the birthday, the ceiling fan, the question I couldn't answer. When was the last time I did something just for myself? That question haunted me for weeks. It followed me around the house while I cooked and cleaned. It whispered in my ear at church while I smiled and shook hands and pretended everything was fine. It kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, listening to Vernon snore. I started to notice things I trained myself to ignore. The way Vernon talked over me when I tried to speak. The way he made decisions without asking my opinion. The way he controlled the television remote, the thermostat, the radio in the car. All the small things that added up to a life where my preferences didn't exist. The way my children called when they needed something. Babysitting, advice, money, but rarely just to talk. The way they assumed I'd always be available, always say yes, always put their needs ahead of my own. The way I'd built a life around being useful to other people, and now that usefulness felt more like a prison than a purpose. I started to feel angry. Not the hot, explosive anger that comes and goes quickly, but a slow, simmering anger that built up over weeks and months, fed by every small dismissal, every overlooked preference, every moment when I realized I'd stopped existing as a person in my own right. I was angry at Vernon for never seeing me. I was angry at my children for taking me for granted. I was angry at the world for teaching me that my value lay in what I could do for others, not in who I was. But mostly, I was angry at myself for going along with it, for letting it happen, for giving away pieces of myself year after year until there was almost nothing left. I was 68 years old, and I was finally ready to be angry about it. Swallowed so many words over the decades that I'd forgotten what my own voice sounded like. But now, the words were rising up, pushing against my throat, demanding to be heard. It started small.
One evening, about a month after my birthday, Vernon and I were sitting down to dinner. I'd made his favorite, pork chops and mashed potatoes and green beans from a can, the way he liked them. I'd set the table nice, put out the good napkins, even lit a candle because I thought it might be pleasant. Vernon sat down, picked up his fork, and started eating without a word. No, this looks nice. No, thank you for cooking. Not even a glance at the candle I'd lit or the napkins I'd folded. Just the sound of his fork scraping against the plate. Something inside me snapped. "Vernon," I said, my voice coming out sharper than I intended, "did you notice anything different about the table tonight?" He looked up confused. "What?" "The table. Did you notice anything different?" He glanced around, his eyebrows furrowed like I'd asked him to solve a complicated math problem. "Looks the same to me." "I lit a candle. I put out the good napkins. I was trying to make things nice." Vernon shrugged and went back to his pork chop. "Okay." That was it. Just okay. Like I told him the weather was mild or the mail had arrived. I sat there, staring at him, feeling the anger bubble up inside me like water about to boil over. "That's all you have to say? Okay?" Vernon looked up again, annoyance flickering across his face. "What do you want me to say, Pearl? It's a candle. It's napkins. I don't know why you're making such a big deal about it." "Because I wanted you to notice." The words came out louder than I meant them to, and Vernon actually flinched. In 46 years of marriage, I'd never raised my voice at him, not once. "I wanted you to see that I did something special. I wanted you to appreciate it, to appreciate me." Vernon set down his fork, his expression shifting from annoyed to wary. "Pearl, what's gotten into you lately? You've been acting strange for weeks now." "Have I?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe I'm just tired, Vernon. Tired of cooking meals no one thanks me for. Tired of keeping a house no one notices. Tired of being invisible in my own life." "Invisible? What are you talking about? You're right here. I see you every day." "Do you?" I leaned forward, looking him straight in the eyes. "Do you really see me, Vernon? Or do you just see someone who cooks your food and washes your clothes and keeps your life running smoothly?" He didn't answer. He just stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. "When's my birthday?" "What?" "My birthday. The date. When is it?" Vernon's face went blank. I watched him search his memory, watched him come up empty, watched the realization dawn that he didn't know. "It was last month," I said quietly. "October 15th. We had cake. The kids called. You gave me a card that Carolyn probably picked out for you. Pearl, what's my favorite color, Vernon? My favorite song? My favorite food?" Silence. He had no idea. After 46 years, he had no idea. That's what I mean by invisible. You don't know me. You've never bothered to know me. I'm just furniture to you. Something that's always been here, something you don't even notice anymore. Vernon's jaw tightened. That's not fair. I've worked hard my whole life to provide for this family. I've given you a good home, a good life. A good life? I interrupted. Whose definition of good, Vernon? Yours? Because nobody ever asked me what I wanted. Nobody ever asked me what would make me happy.
Stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "Mama, what's wrong? Are you okay? You never said you were unhappy because you never asked." We stared at each other across the table, the candle flickering between us, the untouched food growing cold. In 46 years of marriage, we'd never had a conversation like this. Never dug beneath the surface, never confronted the truth of what we'd become. Finally, Vernon pushed back from the table and stood up. "I don't know what's going on with you," he said, his voice cold, "but I don't like it. You've changed, Pearl, and not for the better." He walked out of the kitchen, and a moment later, I heard the television click on in the living room. Conversation over, problem dismissed. Back to regularly scheduled programming. I sat there alone at that table, the candle still burning, the anger still churning, and I realized something important. Vernon wasn't going to change. He couldn't change, not because he was cruel or evil, but because he genuinely didn't understand what I was talking about. He'd lived his whole life believing he was a good husband because he worked hard and paid the bills and didn't drink or cheat or hit me. By his standards, he'd done everything right. The problem was his standards and mine. After that night, things got harder. Vernon and I walked around each other like strangers, polite but distant. He didn't bring up our argument, and neither did I. We fell back into our old routines, meals and television and sleeping in the same bed without touching, but something had shifted. The silence between us felt different now, heavier, more honest. I started spending more time alone. I'd take long walks in the morning before Vernon woke up, wandering through the neighborhood while the dew was still on the grass. I'd sit in the backyard in the afternoon, watching the birds at the feeder, thinking thoughts I never allowed myself to think before. What if I'd married someone else? What if I'd made different choices? What if I'd put myself first just once instead of always putting everyone else ahead of me? Dangerous thoughts. Selfish thoughts. The kind of thoughts a good wife and mother wasn't supposed to have. But I couldn't stop them. One afternoon, about 2 months after my birthday, I was sitting in the backyard when Carolyn stopped by unexpectedly. She came around the side of the house, still in her work clothes, her face tight with that particular kind of stress that comes from juggling too many responsibilities. My daughter was 43 years old now, with 2 teenagers of her own, a demanding job, and a husband who traveled for work more than he was home. She looked exhausted. She looked like I used to look back when I was drowning in motherhood and didn't even know it. "Mama," she said, dropping into the chair beside me, "I need a favor." Of course she did. That's why she was here. Not to visit, not to check on me, not to sit and talk like we used to when she was small. She needed something. "What is it, honey?" "It's Jason's tournament this weekend. He's playing in Chattanooga and I can't miss work. And Brian's in Chicago until Tuesday. I need someone to take him." Chattanooga? That's 3 hours away. I know, but it's the regional finals, Mama. He's been working toward this all year. I can't let him miss it. I looked at my daughter, at the desperation in her eyes, at the way she was already assuming I'd say yes because I always said yes, because that's what Mama did. What about his other grandparents? Brian's parents? Carolyn's face flickered with surprise. I'd never asked that before. I had never questioned, never pushed back, never suggested that maybe someone else could step up. They're busy, she said. They have plans. And my plans don't matter? What, Mama? I didn't say that. You didn't have to? I heard the edge in my own voice and didn't try to soften it. You assumed I'd be free. You assumed I'd drop everything to help, because that's what I always do, isn't it? That's what I'm for.
I'm fine. I'm just tired, Carolyn. Tired of being the one everyone calls when they need something. Tired of being taken for granted. Taken for granted? Mama, that's not fair. We appreciate everything you do. Do you? When's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for babysitting or advice or a favor, just to talk. Carolyn opened her mouth, then closed it again. I watched her try to remember, watched her come up empty. I've been busy, she said finally. Work is crazy, and the kids. I know you're busy. Everyone's always busy. I sighed, suddenly feeling very old and very sad. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, sweetheart. I'm just trying to explain how things feel from where I'm sitting. And how do they feel? I thought about how to answer, how to put 46 years of accumulated exhaustion into words my daughter could understand. I feel like I don't exist, I said quietly. Like I'm just a service, not a person. Like nobody sees me, really sees me, except when they need something. Carolyn's eyes filled with tears. Mama, I had no idea you felt that way. How could you? I never told you. I never told anyone. I reached over and took her hand. That's my fault, not yours. I spent my whole life teaching you that Mama would always be there, that Mama would always say yes, that Mama's needs didn't matter. I can't blame you for believing what I taught you. We sat there in silence for a while, holding hands, the afternoon sun warm on our faces. I could see Carolyn processing what I'd said, turning it over in her mind, trying to reconcile this new version of her mother with the woman she thought she knew. I'm sorry, she said finally. I'm so sorry, Mama. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know you didn't, honey. Nobody ever means to. It just happens. Slowly over time, until one day you wake up and realize you've disappeared. Carolyn squeezed my hand. What can I do? How can I help? I smiled, touched by the question. It was the first time in a long time anyone had asked what they could do for me instead of the other way around. You can start by finding someone else to take Jason to Chattanooga. I love that boy with all my heart, but I can't keep being the backup plan every time something comes up. I need to matter more than that. Carolyn nodded slowly. Okay, I understand. I'll figure something out. And maybe, I added,
You could call me sometime this week? Not because you need anything, just to talk." "I will," she promised. "I will, Mama." She left a little while later, after hugging me longer than she had in years. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and disappear down the street, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe things really could change. Maybe it wasn't too late to teach the people I loved how to treat me differently. Maybe choosing myself didn't have to mean losing everyone else. But the hope didn't last long. That night, Vernon came home in a mood. I could tell the moment he walked through the door, the heaviness in his step, the set of his jaw, the way he dropped his keys on the counter with more force than necessary. "What's wrong?" I asked, though part of me didn't really want to know. "Had a talk with Carolyn today," he said, his voice tight. "She called me at work, said you refused to take Jason to his tournament." "I didn't refuse. I just suggested she found someone else for once." Vernon turned to face me, his eyes hard. "That boy is counting on us, Pearl. He's our grandson, and you're going to let him down because you're going through some kind of, midlife crisis?" "It's not a midlife crisis, Vernon. I'm 68 years old. If anything, it's an end-of-life crisis." I tried to keep my voice calm, but the anger was rising again. "I'm just asking for consideration, some acknowledgement that my time and energy matter too." "Your time and energy?" Vernon laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "What do you have to do all day, Pearl? You don't work. The kids are grown. You've got nothing but time." The words hit me like a slap. Nothing but time. Like my days were empty, meaningless, worthless. Like the work I did, the cooking, cleaning, errands, and emotional labor, didn't count because nobody paid me for it. "Is that what you think?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "That I do nothing all day?"
"I didn't say nothing. I just said you have time. More time than Carolyn, certainly. More time than me." "Time for what, Vernon? Time to be at everyone's beck and call? Time to drop everything whenever someone needs something? Time to exist only in relation to other people's needs?" Vernon threw up his hands. "Here we go again. More of this invisible nonsense. I don't know what's gotten into you, Pearl, but I don't like it. You used to be so agreeable." "I used to be a doormat," I said. "I used to let everyone walk all over me because I didn't know I had the right to say no. But I'm done with that, Vernon. I'm done being agreeable at the expense of my own sanity." "So, what do you want? You want me to thank you for every meal? Throw a parade every time you do the laundry?" "I want you to see me." The words came out as a shout, echoing off the kitchen walls. "I want you to know who I am. I want to matter to you as a person, not just as a service." Vernon stared at me, his face flushed with anger. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said something that broke my heart. "I don't know what you're talking about, Pearl. I've never understood all this emotional stuff. I don't have it in me. I never have." And I realized, with a clarity that was almost peaceful, that he was telling the truth. He didn't have it in him. He wasn't capable of giving me what I needed, not because he didn't want to, but because he simply didn't know how. He'd never learned. No one had ever taught him, and at 71 years old, he wasn't going to suddenly develop emotional depth he'd never possessed. This was who Vernon was. This was who he'd always been. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I wrestled with questions I'd never allowed myself to ask. Could I stay in a marriage that left me feeling invisible? Could I leave after 46 years, at 68 years old, with nowhere to go and no idea who I was outside of being Vernon's wife? Was it possible to find peace within my current life? Or would peace require burning everything down and starting over? I didn't have answers. All I had was the growing certainty that something had to give. I couldn't keep living the way I'd been living. The emptiness was swallowing me whole. I started doing small things for myself, things that might seem insignificant to anyone watching, but felt revolutionary to me. I bought a book, a novel, a romance, the kind I used to love, and I read it in the afternoons while Vernon was out. I didn't hide it exactly, but I didn't announce it either. It was mine, my secret pleasure, my tiny rebellion. I started humming again, softly, under my breath while I did the dishes or folded laundry. Vernon complained once, and I kept humming anyway. My voice, my house, my right to make noise if I wanted to. I signed up for a community choir, Wednesday evenings, 7 to 9, at the community center downtown. I didn't ask Vernon's permission, I just told him I was going. "A choir?" he said. "Since when do you sing?" "Since always," I said. "You just never knew." The choir was a revelation. There were about 20 of us, mostly women my age, with a few younger folks mixed in. The director was a retired music teacher named Gladys, a black woman in her 70s, with silver hair and a laugh that could fill up a room. The first night, I was so nervous I could barely breathe. I hadn't sung in front of anyone in decades. I didn't know if my voice still worked, if I could still carry a tune, if I'd make a fool of myself. But the moment we started warming up, something inside me came alive. The music moved through me like water through dry earth, filling cracks I didn't know existed. My voice rose with the others, blending and harmonizing, becoming part of something larger than myself. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I felt whole. After rehearsal, I sat in my car and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears, joy tears. The kind of tears that come when you find something you lost so long ago you'd forgotten you were looking for it. I'd found my voice, not just my singing voice, my real voice, the one that had been silenced for 46 years. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was never going to lose it again. The choir became my lifeline. Every Wednesday, I drove to that community center like I was driving to salvation. I made friends there, women like me, women who had spent their lives giving and giving until there was nothing left. Women who were finally learning to give to themselves. There was Mabel, who'd raised 6 kids and was now learning to paint. There was Dorothy, whose husband had passed 2 years ago and was discovering who she was without him. There was Lucille, who'd left an unhappy marriage at 72 and was now traveling the world on her late mother's inheritance. These women understood me in a way Vernon never had. They'd walked the same road, fought the same battles, asked the same questions. And they were proof that it was possible to choose yourself, even late in life, even when everyone expected you to keep playing the same old role. One evening after rehearsal, Dorothy and I went for coffee. We sat in the little cafe downtown, sipping decaf lattes and talking about our lives. "Can I ask you something personal?" Dorothy said. "Of course." "Are you happy? In your marriage, I mean." I thought about how to answer. Happiness felt like a foreign concept, something that belonged to other people, something I'd stopped expecting a long time ago. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't think that I've been happy in a long time. But I don't know if I'm unhappy enough to leave. Does that make sense?" Dorothy nodded. "It makes perfect sense. That's exactly how I felt for the last 10 years of my marriage. Not happy, not unhappy enough to go, just existing, going through the motions." "What changed?" "Harold died." She said it simply, without self-pity. "And when he was gone, I realized I'd been waiting my whole life for something to change, and nothing ever did. I'd wasted decades waiting instead of doing."
She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much and learned from all of it. Don't wait, Pearl. Whatever you need to do, whether it's leaving or staying or something in between, don't wait for circumstances to decide for you. Choose. Even if the choice is hard, even if it scares you, choose your own life while you still have time to live it. Her words stayed with me for days, for weeks. Choose. Don't wait. Choose your own life. But how? How do you choose yourself when you've spent 68 years choosing everyone else? How do you find peace when you don't even know what peace would look like? I didn't have answers, but I was starting to realize that the answers weren't going to come from waiting. They were only going to come from doing, from taking one step, then another, from choosing myself, even when it felt impossible, from believing for the first time in my life that I was worth choosing. Tipping point. Officialize for Adikero therapy. Papa Abidis Yev Nidzu.
Things I need to say. Things I should have said a long time ago, and I don't have much time left to say them. I'll come see you, I said immediately. I'll come tomorrow. I was hoping you'd say that. Another pause. Pearl, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Are you happy? With your life, I mean. With Vernon. With how everything turned out. The question caught me off guard. Of all the things I'd expected her to say, this wasn't it. Why are you asking me that? Because I'm dying, Pearl. And when you're dying, you start thinking about things differently. You start seeing things you couldn't see before. She took a shaky breath. I've been lying here in this bed, looking back at my whole life, and you know what I realized? I wasted it. I wasted the whole damn thing. Oh, well, that's not true. Yes, it is. Let me finish. Her voice was stronger now, urgent. I spent my whole life being pretty. That's all I ever was. Pretty Opal. The one all the boys wanted. The one who got all the attention. And I thought that meant something. I thought it made me special. She laughed, but it turned into another cough. But pretty fades, Pearl. It fades, and then what do you have? Nothing. I never developed myself, never figured out who I was beyond the face in the mirror. I married a man who wanted a trophy wife, and when I wasn't in trophy anymore, he found someone younger, and I was left with nothing. No identity, no purpose, no idea who I was. I listened in silence, my heart aching for the sister I'd never really known. But you, Opal continued, you were always the smart one, Pearl. The capable one, the one who could do anything, be anything. I used to be jealous of you, did you know that? Jealous of your strength, your steadiness, your ability to keep going no matter what. Jealous of me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Opal, I spent my whole childhood wishing I was you. I know, and that's the tragedy of it, isn't it? We were both so busy wanting to be each other that neither of us figured out how to be ourselves. She paused, gathering strength for what came next. That's why I'm asking, Pearl. Are you happy? Or did you make the same mistake I did? Did you spend your whole life being what everyone else wanted instead of figuring out what you wanted? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. And I knew I couldn't lie. Not to a dying woman. Not to my sister. Not anymore. No, I whispered. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. Then change it. Opal's voice was fierce, urgent. Change it now while you still can. Don't wait until you're lying in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of you, realizing you wasted your whole life. Don't make my mistake, Pearl. Please. I don't know how, I admitted, tears streaming down my face. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I want. Then figure it out. Take the time, do the work, but don't give up. Promise me, Pearl. Promise me you'll choose yourself before it's too late. I promise, I said, the words coming from somewhere deep inside me. Good. She sounded exhausted now, her burst of energy fading. Come see me tomorrow. We have so much to talk about, so many years to make up for. I'll be there, first thing in the morning. I drove to Montgomery the next day. The nursing home was a nice one, clean and bright, with friendly staff and flowers in the lobby, but it still smelled like all nursing homes smell. That particular combination of disinfectant and old age and approaching death that no amount of air freshener can disguise. Opal was in room 217, at the end of a long hallway. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. The pretty girl I remembered was gone, and her place was a small, shrunken woman with papery skin and hollow cheeks, her once golden hair now white and thin against the pillow. She looked like she'd aged 20 years since I'd seen her last Christmas. But her eyes were the same, blue and sharp and full of life, even now. "Pearl, you came," she said, reaching out a trembling hand. "Of course I came." I took her hand and sat down in the chair beside her bed. I said I would.
I know, but people say a lot of things they don't mean. I wasn't sure. She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so glad you're here." We talked for hours that day. Not about the cancer or the treatments or how much time she had left. We talked about our childhoods, about our parents, about the ways we'd both felt invisible, both felt inadequate, both felt like we were never quite enough. We talked about our marriages, hers to a man who'd left her for his secretary, mine to a man who'd never really seen me. We talked about the choices we'd made and the choices we wished we'd made differently. We talked about regret. "The worst part," Opal said, "is knowing I could have been different. I could have developed myself, found my own identity, built a life that meant something, but I was so focused on being pretty, on being wanted, that I never bothered. I thought that was enough." "It's not too late," I said, though we both knew it was. "For me it is." She squeezed my hand. "But not for you, Pearl. You still have time. You could have 10 years, 20 years. Who knows? That's a whole lifetime if you use it right." "I don't know how to use it," I admitted. "I don't know how to be anything other than what I've been." "Then learn. That's what time is for." Opal's eyes were intense, boring into mine. "Start with something small. One thing you've always wanted to do but never did. One dream you gave up. One piece of yourself you buried. Dig it up. Bring it back to life." "Like what?" "I don't know. What did you love, Pearl? Before Vernon, before the kids, before you became everyone's everything. What did you love?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Reaching back through the decades to the girl I used to be. "Music," I said slowly. "I loved music. I loved to sing." "Then sing," Opal smiled, and for a moment I could see the pretty girl she used to be shining through the wreckage of age and illness. "Sing every day. Sing like no one's listening. Sing like your life depends on it, because maybe it does." "I joined a choir," I told her, "a few weeks ago. It's the first thing I've done for myself in I don't know how long." "That's wonderful, Pearl. That's a start. But it's just a start. You need to go further. You need to figure out who you really are underneath all the roles you've been playing. And then you need to be that person fully and unapologetically for whatever time you have left. What if Vernon doesn't like who I become? Then that's his problem, not yours.
You've spent 46 years being who he wanted you to be. It's time to be who you want to be. If he can't handle that, well, maybe you need to ask yourself some hard questions about that marriage. I visited Opal every week for the next 6 weeks. Every Thursday, I'd make the drive to Montgomery and spend the day with her. We'd talk and cry and laugh and remember. We'd share secrets we'd never told anyone. We'd become, for the first time in our lives, real sisters. It was the closest I'd ever felt to her, and it was happening at the end, when there was almost no time left. The tragedy of that wasn't lost on me. All those decades we'd wasted, all those years we could have been friends, all that time we'd let slip through our fingers because we were too busy, too distant, too caught up in our own lives. I promised myself I wouldn't make that mistake again. I wouldn't waste another moment, another relationship, another opportunity to connect. During those visits, Opal and I talked about what it meant to choose yourself. "It's not selfish," she said one afternoon about 3 weeks before the end. "That's what they want you to believe, that putting yourself first is selfish, that good women sacrifice everything for everyone else. But it's a lie, Pearl. It's a lie designed to keep us small." "But I have responsibilities. Vernon, the kids, the grandkids. And you can still meet those responsibilities while also meeting your own needs. It's not either or, it's both and." She grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "The problem isn't that you have responsibilities. The problem is that you've made yourself responsible for everything, including other people's happiness. And that's not your job, Pearl. It was never your job." "Then what is my job?" "To live your own life, fully, authentically, without apology." She smiled. "To be Pearl, whoever Pearl turns out to be. Not Vernon's wife, not Carolyn's mother, not anybody's anything. Just Pearl." "I don't know who that is anymore." "Then find out. That's the adventure, Pearl. That's the whole point." She died on the Tuesday in March. I was there, holding her hand when she took her last breath. It was peaceful in the end. She just slipped away, like falling asleep, like letting go of something heavy she'd been carrying for too long. I sat with her body for a long time afterward. The nurses came and went, doing whatever it is they do when someone passes, but I barely noticed them. I was too busy thinking about everything Opal had said, everything we'd shared, everything I'd learned in those 6 weeks. My sister had given me a gift, the gift of clarity, the gift of permission, the gift of understanding that it was never too late to choose yourself, never too late to find peace. Now it was up to me to use it. I drove home from Montgomery that night in a daze. The highway stretched out before me, dark and empty, and I let my mind wander where it wanted to go. I thought about Opal. I thought about my life. I thought about all the years I'd spent being invisible, being useful, being everyone else's everything. And I thought about what I wanted now. Not what Vernon wanted, not what the kids wanted, not what society or the church or anyone else thought I should want. What did I want? The answer came slowly, rising up from somewhere deep inside me like water from a well. I wanted peace. Not the absence of conflict. That's not real peace. Real peace is the presence of wholeness. The feeling that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, being exactly who you're supposed to be. I wanted to feel whole.
I wanted to feel seen. I wanted to feel like I mattered. Not because of what I could do for other people, but because of who I was. I wanted to sing without apologizing. I wanted to read without hiding. I wanted to take up space without feeling guilty about it. I wanted to know myself, to like myself, to be myself. For the first time in 68 years, I wanted to choose myself. And I realized, with a clarity that was almost painful, that choosing myself was going to require making some very hard decisions. When I got home that night, Vernon was already asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, looking at him in the dim light from the hallway. This man I'd spent 46 years with. This stranger I'd shared a bed with, a life with, a whole existence with. I didn't hate him. I realized that now. Whatever anger I'd been carrying had faded during those weeks with Opal, replaced by something softer. Sadness, maybe? Acceptance. Vernon was who he was. He wasn't going to change. He wasn't capable of giving me what I needed, and I couldn't keep waiting for a miracle that was never going to come. But that didn't mean I had to leave. That was the revelation that hit me as I stood there watching him sleep. Choosing myself didn't necessarily mean leaving my marriage. It could mean staying, but staying differently. Setting boundaries, making space for myself within the life I'd already built. The question wasn't whether to stay or go. The question was, could I be myself within this marriage? Could I find peace here, in this house, with this man, while still honoring my own needs and desires? I didn't know the answer, but I knew I had to try. The next morning, I sat Vernon down at the kitchen table. He looked wary, probably expecting another argument. We've had so many arguments lately, so many difficult conversations that went nowhere. I could see him bracing himself for more of the same. But this conversation was going to be different. "Vernon," I said calmly, "my sister died yesterday." His face changed immediately. Whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't this. "Pearl, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was that sick." "I know. I didn't tell you. We weren't close, Opal and I, and not until these last few weeks. But those weeks changed me, Vernon. Being with her as she was dying, it made me see things differently." "What kind of things?" "Everything. My life, our marriage, who I am and who I want to be. I've been unhappy for a long time, Vernon. You know that. We've talked about it. But I've been going about things all wrong." "What do you mean?"
I've been waiting for you to change, waiting for you to see me, to understand me, to become someone you're not. I shook my head. That's not fair to either of us. You are who you are. I can't change that, and I shouldn't try. Vernon looked confused. So, what are you saying? I'm saying that I need to change.
I need to start choosing myself instead of waiting for you to choose me. I reached across the table and took his hand. But I'd like to do that within our marriage if possible. I'm not ready to give up on us. Not yet. What does that mean, choosing yourself within the marriage? I thought about this during the long drive home. I'd made a list in my head of what I needed, what I wanted, what I was no longer willing to live without. It means I'm going to start doing things for myself, I said. The choir is just the beginning. I want to travel. I want to take classes. I want to spend time with friends, real friends, not just acquaintances from church. I want to have a life that's mine, not just an extension of yours. Vernon's jaw tightened. And what about me? What about us? Us can still exist, but it has to be different. I can't keep being the one who does everything, decides nothing, and matters only when someone needs something. I need to matter all the time, Vernon. I need to be seen. I don't know what that means, he admitted. I don't know how to see you the way you want to be seen. I know. I squeezed his hand, and I'm not asking you to become a different person. I'm just asking you to try, to listen when I talk, to show interest in my life, to treat me like a partner instead of a servant. You're not a servant, Pearl. I've never thought of you that way. Maybe not consciously, but that's how it's felt, Vernon, for a long time. He was quiet for a while, staring at our joined hands on the table. I could see him thinking, processing, trying to understand. Finally, he looked up at me. I don't want to lose you, he said. His voice was rough, emotional in a way I rarely heard from him. In 46 years of marriage, he never admitted to needing me, never expressed fear of losing me, never opened up like this. Maybe he was capable of more than I thought. Maybe there was hope for us after all. You don't have to lose me, I said gently. But things have to change. We can't keep going the way we've been going. It's killing me, Vernon. Slowly, quietly, but it's killing me. Okay, he nodded, his eyes wet. Okay, I'll try. I don't know how, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking. We sat there for a long time, holding hands across the kitchen table, the morning light streaming through the windows. Something had shifted between us. Something small, but significant. A door had been opened that had been closed for 46 years. Whether we could walk through it together remained to be seen. But for the first time in a long time, I had hope. Hope.
The months that followed were not easy. Change never is, especially when you're 68 years old and trying to undo patterns that have been set for decades. There were setbacks and arguments, and days when I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Days when the old Pearl, the agreeable one, the invisible one, wanted to come back and take over, but I didn't let her. Every time I felt myself slipping into old habits, I'd think of Opal. I'd hear her voice in my head, fierce and urgent. Don't make my mistake, Pearl. Choose yourself before it's too late. And I'd straighten my spine and remember who I was becoming. The choir became my anchor. Every Wednesday night, I drove to that community center like it was holy ground. I sang with everything I had, letting the music fill up all the empty spaces inside me. I made friends, real friends, the kind I'd never had before. Women who saw me, who knew me, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could do for them. Gladys, the choir director, became something like a mentor to me. She'd lived a big life, raised 4 children, buried 2 husbands, traveled the world, written poetry that had been published in actual magazines.
She was 76 years old and more alive than anyone I'd ever met. "Pearl," she said to me one evening after rehearsal, "you have a beautiful voice, but more than that, you have a beautiful spirit. I can see it shining through when you sing." "Thank you," I said, feeling my cheeks flush. I wasn't used to compliments, wasn't used to being seen. "But I also see something else," Gladys continued. "I see a woman who's been holding back for a long time. A woman who's afraid to take up too much space." I looked down at my hands. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been there. She put her hand on my shoulder. "Let me tell you something, Pearl. You have permission to be big. You have permission to be loud. You have permission to want things and go after them and not apologize for taking up space in this world." "I'm trying," I said. "It's just hard. After so many years of being small." "I know it is. But here's the thing about getting older. We don't have time to waste on being small anymore. Every day is precious. Every moment matters. We have to live like we mean it, because one day we won't get another chance." Her words echoed Opal's. The same message delivered by two very different women. Maybe the universe was trying to tell me something. I started taking Gladys's advice to heart. I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped making myself small to make others comfortable. I started speaking up, sharing opinions, taking up space. It felt terrifying at first, like I was breaking rules I'd followed my whole life. But the more I did it, the more natural it became. The more I realized that the rules had never served me in the first place. At home, things were slowly improving. Vernon was trying, I could see it, even when his efforts fell short. He'd ask about my day sometimes. He'd comment on dinner occasionally. He even came to one of my choir concerts, sitting in the back row with his arms crossed, looking uncomfortable but present. It wasn't a transformation. He wasn't suddenly going to become the emotionally available husband I'd always wanted, but he was making an effort, and that effort meant something. "I heard you singing in the kitchen this morning," Vernon said one evening, about 4 months after our big conversation. "That song you were humming, what was it?" I looked up from my book, surprised. Vernon never asked about my music, never noticed it at all, as far as I could tell. "It's called Amazing Grace," I said. "We're doing it for our spring concert." It sounded nice. He paused, clearly uncomfortable with what he was about to say. "You have a nice voice, Pearl. I don't think I ever told you that." I felt tears prick at my eyes. Such a small thing, such a tiny acknowledgement, but after 46 years of silence, it felt like a miracle. "Thank you, Vernon. That means a lot." He nodded, already retreating back into himself, but he'd opened the door, just a crack, and that crack was enough. I started traveling. Not far at first, just day trips to places I'd always wanted to see but never had. The Botanical Gardens in Birmingham, the Art Museum in Huntsville, a little bookstore in a town 2 hours away that specialized in romance novels. I went alone. That was the revolutionary part. I didn't ask Vernon to come with me, didn't wait for a friend to be available, didn't make my adventures dependent on anyone else's schedule or interest. I just went. The first time, I was so nervous I almost turned around and came home. What was I doing? A 68-year-old woman driving to a strange city by herself? What if something happened? What if I got lost? What if I made a fool of myself? But I kept going. And when I got to the Botanical Gardens and walked through the gates and saw all those flowers blooming in the spring sunshine, something inside me bloomed too. This is mine, I thought.
This moment, this beauty, this experience, it's mine. I chose it. I made it happen. Nobody gave it to me or did it for me. I did it myself. It was the most powerful feeling I'd ever had. After that, the trips became regular. Every week or two, I'd pick a destination and go. Sometimes I'd invite a friend from choir. Sometimes I'd go alone. Either way, I was building a life that was mine, not defined by Vernon or the children or anyone else's expectations. I was becoming Pearl. 6 months after my 68th birthday, I finally did the thing I'd been dreaming about my whole life. I went to the ocean. I planned the trip for weeks, researched beaches, booked a hotel, mapped out the route. I didn't tell Vernon until a few days before, not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted to make all the decisions myself. I wanted this to be completely, entirely mine. "The ocean?" said Vernon. "By yourself?" "Yes, by myself." "But why? We've got the lake right here." I smiled, remembering all the times he'd said that over the years, all the times I'd agreed with him, pushed down my desire, told myself the lake was enough. "Because I've wanted to see the ocean my whole life," I said, "and I'm not waiting anymore." He didn't understand. He probably never would, but he didn't try to stop me, and that was enough. I drove to Gulf Shores, Alabama, 5 hours, straight down Highway 65, watching the landscape change from rolling hills to flat coastal plains. My heart beat faster with every mile, anticipation building like music rising to a crescendo. When I finally saw it, that vast expanse of blue-green water stretching out to the horizon, I had to pull over to the side of the road because I was crying too hard to drive. It was more beautiful than I'd ever imagined, more vast, more powerful, more alive. The waves rolled in and out with a rhythm that felt ancient and eternal, and I stood there on the side of the road, tears streaming down my face, watching something I dreamed about for 68 years. I'd made it. I'd finally made it. I spent 3 days at that beach. I walked for miles along the shore, letting the waves wash over my feet, feeling the sand between my toes. I collected shells and sea glass and pieces of driftwood. I sat on the sand at sunset and watched the sky turn orange and pink and purple. I sang. Not loudly, I wasn't ready for that, but softly, under my breath, hymns and folk songs and melodies from my childhood. My voice mixed with the sound of the waves, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly at peace. This is what it feels like, I thought. This is what it feels like to be whole. On my last morning, I woke up early and went to the beach to watch the sunrise. The sky was just starting to lighten, pink and gold spreading across the horizon like watercolors bleeding into each other. The beach was empty, except for a few early morning joggers and a man walking his dog. I found a quiet spot and sat down on the sand, wrapping my sweater around my shoulders against the morning chill. And I thought about my life, about the girl I used to be, the one who loved to read and sing and dream about the ocean, about the woman I'd become, the one who'd given up all those things to be a good wife, a good mother, a good everything to everyone except herself, about Opal, who died without ever becoming who she was meant to be, about Vernon, who was trying, in his limited way, to be a better husband, about my children and grandchildren who were learning to see me as a person instead of just a service,
about the choir and Gladys and all the friends I'd made, the women who understood me in ways no one ever had before. About the journey I'd been on these past 6 months, from invisible to visible, from lost to found, from empty to full. I'd chosen myself. Finally, after 68 years, I'd chosen myself. And the peace I'd been searching for, it was here, not in a place or a person or a circumstance, but inside me. It had been inside me all along, waiting for me to clear away all the noise and the obligation and the self-abandonment so I could finally hear it. Peace wasn't something you found. It was something you allowed, something you created by making room for it in your life. I watched the sun rise over the ocean, painting the water gold, and I made a promise to myself. I would never stop choosing myself. No matter how old I got, no matter what challenges I faced, I would keep making room for Pearl, the real Pearl, the whole Pearl, the Pearl I was always meant to be. That was the gift Opal had given me, the gift of understanding that it was never too late, and I wasn't going to waste it. When I got home from the beach, Vernon was waiting for me on the front porch. He stood up when I pulled into the driveway, his hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncertain, like he wasn't sure what to expect, like he didn't know who was coming back from that trip. I got out of the car and walked up to him, feeling the peace still glowing inside me like an ember. How was it? The ocean? It was beautiful. It was everything I always imagined and more. He nodded slowly. I'm glad. I'm glad you went. Are you? Yeah. He looked at me, really looked at me in a way he hadn't in years. You seem different, Pearl. Lighter somehow. Happier? I feel different, I admitted. I feel like I'm finally becoming who I'm supposed to be. And who's that? I thought about how to answer, how to explain the transformation that had happened inside me, the peace that had taken root, the wholeness I'd finally found. Just Pearl, I said finally. Not anyone's wife or mother or servant, just Pearl. A woman who sings and reads and goes to the ocean by herself. A woman who takes up space and doesn't apologize for it. A woman who matters. Vernon was quiet for a moment. Then he did something that surprised me. He smiled. I'd like to meet her, he said. This Pearl. She sounds like someone worth knowing. It wasn't a perfect moment. Vernon wasn't suddenly transformed into the emotionally available partner I'd always wanted. He was still Vernon, limited, frustrating, set in his ways. But he was trying. And in that moment, his trying was enough. She's right here. She's been here all along. You just have to look. I walked past him into the house, carrying my suitcase and my shells and my memories of the ocean. Behind me, I heard Vernon following me, his footsteps slow but steady.
We had a long way to go, he and I. Maybe we'd make it, maybe we wouldn't. The future was uncertain, the way futures always are. But for the first time in 46 years, I wasn't worried about it. Because whatever happened with Vernon, whatever happened with my marriage, I knew I'd be okay. I had myself now. I had Pearl, the real Pearl, the whole Pearl, the one I'd finally chosen after 68 years of choosing everyone else. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.
5 years have passed since that birthday morning when I woke up and couldn't remember the last decision I'd made for myself. 5 years since I started the journey of choosing myself. 5 years of learning and growing and becoming who I was always meant to be. I'm 73 years old now. I'm sitting on my back porch as I tell you this story, watching the evening light turn golden across the garden I planted last spring. There are tomatoes ripening on the vine and sunflowers stretching toward the sky and a little patch of lavender that fills the air with sweetness every time the breeze blows. I planted that garden myself. Every seed, every bulb, every carefully tended row. Not because anyone asked me to, not because it was my job, but because I wanted to. Because it brought me joy. Because Pearl, the real Pearl, the whole Pearl, the one I'd finally chosen after 68 years of choosing everyone else, loves to watch things grow. The choir is still going strong. We've performed in churches and community centers and nursing homes all across Alabama. Last year, we even traveled to Atlanta for a regional competition. We didn't win, but we sang our hearts out, and Gladys said that was all that mattered. She's 81 now, still sharp as a tack, still leading rehearsals every Wednesday night. I hope I have half her energy when I reach her age. I hope I'm still singing, still taking up space, still living like every day is precious. Because it is. Every day is precious. I know that now in a way I didn't before. Dolores from the choir has become my closest friend. We met during my second year in the group when she joined after her husband passed away. She was lost then, the way so many of us are when the life we knew suddenly changes. But she found herself again, the same way I did, by choosing herself one small decision at a time. We travel together now. Last summer, we went to Savannah and spent a week walking through beautiful squares and eating shrimp and grits and browsing antique shops. This fall, we're planning a trip to Charleston. Maybe next year we'll finally make it to New England to see the leaves change. The world is so big, and I wasted so many years seeing so little of it. I'm trying to make up for lost time now, trying to experience everything I can while I still have the chance. Opal would be proud. I know she would. I think about her often, my sister who died without ever becoming herself. I keep her photograph on my nightstand, right next to my reading lamp and the stack of novels I'm working through. Every night before I sleep, I look at her face and remember her words. Choose yourself before it's too late. I'm trying, Opal. Every day, I'm trying. Vernon is still here. That surprises people sometimes. They hear my story, the unhappiness, the invisibility, the choosing myself, and they assume I must have left him. They assume the only way to find peace was to walk away from my marriage. But that's not how it worked out. Not for me, anyway. Vernon and I are still together, still living in the same house, still sharing the same life. But everything is different now. Everything has changed. He's changed. Not completely. Vernon will never be the emotionally available, deeply communicative partner I once dreamed of. That's not who he is. That's not who he's capable of being. But he tries now. He asks about my day. He comments on my singing. He even came with me to the ocean last year. Said he wanted to see what all the fuss was about. We stood on that beach together, two old people with gray hair and wrinkled skin, watching the waves roll in. And Vernon took my hand and said, "I can see why you love it. It's something else, isn't it?"
It wasn't a grand romantic gesture. It wasn't a movie moment, but it was real. It was Vernon trying, in his limited way, to share something that mattered to me. And after all these years, that trying is enough. I've changed too. I stopped waiting for Vernon to make me happy. I stopped expecting him to see me the way I wanted to be seen. I stopped making my peace dependent on his behavior. Instead, I found my peace within myself. I sing every day now, in the shower, in the car, in the garden, while I water my tomatoes. I don't care if Vernon likes it or not. This is my voice, my music, my joy. I'm not hiding it anymore. I read constantly, novels and memoirs and poetry and anything else that catches my eye. I've got a stack of books on my nightstand and another stack in the living room and a whole shelf in the spare bedroom that I've turned into my reading nook. I go to the ocean at least once a year, sometimes more. I've stood on beaches in Florida and Georgia and the Carolinas. I've watched sunrises and sunsets over the water. I've collected enough shells to fill a dozen jars. And I've made friends, real friends, women who know me and love me and see me for who I really am. We have coffee and go to movies and take trips together. We laugh and cry and support each other through everything life throws at us. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not empty anymore. I'm not a ghost in my own life. I'm Pearl. Finally, fully, completely Pearl. The relationship with my children has transformed too. It wasn't easy at first. Carolyn was confused when I started setting boundaries. David didn't understand why I couldn't drop everything to help anymore. Matthew, the youngest, was probably the most adaptable. He'd always been the most perceptive of my three. But over time, they adjusted. They learned to see me differently. They learned to call me just to talk, not just when they needed something. They learned to ask what I wanted, instead of assuming I'd go along with whatever they decided. Carolyn and I are closer now than we've ever been. She took my advice to heart, talked to Richard about feeling invisible in her own marriage. They went to counseling, worked through their issues, came out the other side stronger. She calls me every Sunday afternoon now, not because she needs anything, but because she wants to hear my voice. "You saved my marriage, Mama," she told me once. "By fixing yours, you showed me how to fix mine." I don't know if I saved anything. I just chose myself and let the ripples spread outward. But if my journey helped my daughter find her own path to peace, then every struggle was worth it. The grandchildren have noticed the change too. "Grandma's different now," my oldest grandson Tyler said last Christmas. "She's more, I don't know, more there." More there. What a perfect way to put it. For so long, I was physically present, but emotionally absent, going through the motions, playing a role, not fully inhabiting my own life. Now I'm there, really there, present in every moment, engaged with every interaction, alive in a way I never was before. The grandchildren feel it. They gravitate toward me now in ways they didn't before. They want to hear my stories, learn my songs, help me in my garden. They see me as a person, not just a grandmother,
a whole human being with interests and opinions and a life of my own. That's the gift of choosing yourself. It doesn't just change you, it changes everyone around you. It gives them permission to see you differently. It invites them into a relationship with the real you, not just the role you've been playing. I think about peace a lot these days. What it means, where it comes from, how to hold on to it when life gets hard. And here's what I've learned. Peace isn't the absence of problems. It isn't a perfect life or a perfect marriage or perfect circumstances. It isn't something you find once and then hold on to forever. Peace is a choice you make every day. It's choosing to accept yourself, flaws and all. It's choosing to honor your own needs instead of always putting everyone else first. It's choosing to let go of resentment and bitterness and all the ways you've been wronged. It's choosing to be present in this moment, right here, right now, instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. It's choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a healthy way, a necessary way, a way that allows you to show up fully for the people you love because you first shown up fully for yourself. That's what I learned at 68 years old. That's the wisdom Opal gave me before she died. That's the gift I'm trying to pass on to you. You deserve peace. I don't know who you are listening to this story. I don't know what your life looks like, what struggles you're facing, what roles you've been playing for too long. But I know this: you deserve peace. You deserve to be seen, to be known, to be valued for who you are, not just what you can do for others. You deserve to sing your own song, read your own books, plant your own garden. You deserve to stand on a beach and watch the waves roll in and feel small and vast and alive all at once. You deserve to take up space, to have opinions, to make decisions based on what you want instead of what everyone else expects. You deserve to be yourself fully, completely, unapologetically you. And it's not too late. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how many years you've spent being invisible. I don't care how stuck you feel, how hopeless, how far gone. It's not too late. I was 68 years old when I woke up and couldn't remember the last decision I'd made for myself. 68 years of living for everyone else. 68 years of disappearing. And I found my way back. I found peace. I found Pearl. If I can do it, so can you. Start small. That's what Opal told me, and that's what I'm telling you now. One thing. One small thing that's just for you. A book you've been wanting to read. A class you've been wanting to take. A place you've been wanting to visit. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for someone else to choose you. Choose yourself. Today, right now, this moment. It won't be easy. Change never is. There will be pushback and resistance, and days when you want to give up and go back to the way things were. Don't. Keep going. Keep choosing. Keep becoming. Because on the other side of all that struggle, there's peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and honoring that person every single day. I promise you, it's worth it. Every hard conversation, every boundary set, every moment of doubt and fear and uncertainty, it's all worth it. Peace is worth it. You are worth it. The sun is setting now, painting my garden in shades of gold and pink. I can hear Vernon inside, watching the evening news the way he always does. In a little while, I'll go in and make us some dinner.
Not because it's my job, but because I enjoy cooking when it's my choice. Later, I might read for a while, or call Carolyn, or work on the quilt I'm making for my newest grandchild. Or I might just sit on this porch and watch the stars come out, breathing in the scent of lavender, feeling grateful for everything I have. Grateful for the life I've built, the peace I've found, the woman I've become. Grateful for Opal, who showed me the way. Grateful for Vernon, who's learning to see me. Grateful for my children and grandchildren and friends and choir members and everyone who's been part of this journey. Grateful for myself, for Pearl, for finally choosing her. That's my story, friends. The story of how I woke up at 68 years old and realized I'd been invisible my whole life. The story of how I found my voice, my peace, myself. The story of how I chose myself and found everything I'd been missing. I hope it helps you. I hope it gives you courage. I hope it shows you that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. And I hope that somewhere out there, someone who needs to hear this is listening. Someone who's been invisible for too long. Someone who's forgotten who they are. Someone who's ready to choose themselves but doesn't know how to start. Start here. Start now. Start with one small choice. And keep going, no matter what. Keep going. Because peace is waiting for you. It's been waiting your whole life. All you have to do is choose it. All you have to do is choose yourself. Now, friends, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever lost yourself in the roles you were playing? Have you ever woken up one morning and realized you didn't know who you were anymore? Tell me in the comments. Share your story. Let me know what resonated with you, what touched your heart, what gave you hope. And if you're in the middle of your own journey right now, if you're struggling to choose yourself, to find peace, to become who you were always meant to be, I want you to know something. You're not alone. We're all walking this path together. All of us learning, all of us growing, all of us trying to find our way back to ourselves. You've got this. I believe in you. And I'm cheering for you every step of the way. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to find peace. This is Real Auntie May signing off. Tell me in the comments, what story should I share next? I don't care how old you are. I don't care how many years you've stepped being invisible. I don't care how stuck you feel, how hopeless, how far gone. It's not too late. I was 68 years old when I woke up and couldn't remember the last decision I'd made for myself. 68 years of living for everyone else. 68 years of disappearing. And I found my way back. I found peace. I found Pearl. If I can do it, so can you. Start small. That's what Opal told me, and that's what I'm telling you now. One thing, one small thing that's just for you. A book you've been wanting to read, a class you've been wanting to take, a place you've been wanting to visit. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for someone else to choose you. Choose yourself. Today, right now, this moment. It won't be easy. Change never is. There will be pushback and resistance and days when you want to give up and go back to the way things were. Don't. Keep going. Keep choosing. Keep becoming. Because on the other side of all that struggle, there's peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and honoring that person every single day. I promise you,
It's worth it. Every hard conversation, every boundary set, every moment of doubt and fear and uncertainty, it's all worth it. Peace is worth it. You are worth it. The sun is setting now, painting my garden in shades of gold and pink. I can hear Vernon inside watching the evening news the way he always does. In a little while, I'll go in and make us some dinner, not because it's my job, but because I enjoy cooking when it's my choice. Later, I might read for a while or call Carolyn or work on the quilt I'm making for my newest grandchild. Or I might just sit on this porch and watch the stars come out, breathing in the scent of lavender, feeling grateful for everything I have. Grateful for the life I've built, the peace I've found, the woman I've become. Grateful for Opal, who showed me the way. Grateful for Vernon, who's learning to see me. Grateful for my children and grandchildren and friends and choir members and everyone who's been part of this journey. Grateful for myself, for Pearl, for finally choosing her. That's my story, friends. The story of how I woke up at 68 years old and realized I'd been invisible my whole life. The story of how I found my voice, my peace, myself. The story of how I chose myself and found everything I'd been missing. I hope it helps you. I hope it gives you courage. I hope it shows you that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. And I hope that somewhere out there, someone who needs to hear this is listening. Someone who's been invisible for too long. Someone who's forgotten who they are. Someone who's ready to choose themselves, but doesn't know how to start. Start here. Start now. Start with one small choice. And keep going. No matter what, keep going. Because peace is waiting for you. It's been waiting your whole life. All you have to do is choose it. All you have to do is choose yourself. Now, friends, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever lost yourself in the roles you were playing? Have you ever woken up one morning and realized you didn't know who you were anymore? Tell me in the comments. Share your story. Let me know what resonated with you, what touched your heart, what gave you hope. And if you're in the middle of your own journey right now, if you're struggling to choose yourself, to find peace, to become who you were always meant to be, I want you to know something. You're not alone. We're all walking this path together. All of us learning, all of us growing, all of us trying to find our way back to ourselves. You've got this. I believe in you, and I'm cheering for you every step of the way. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to find peace. This is Real Auntie May, signing off.